Your presence here at this exact moment carries intention woven into the fabric of timing itself. Reality orchestrated this convergence now, in this precise breath, because you've been holding space for the breakthrough, searching for validation, waiting for the moment when all the patience, all the pain, all the silent prayers would finally crystallize into coherent meaning. What I'm about to reveal addresses why your timeline required this specific duration, why events unfolded through this particular sequence of delays and frustrations. Waiting carries a weight most people never articulate. It feels like existing suspended between two territories, no longer inhabiting the landscape you used to call home, but not yet standing on the ground where you long to plant your feet. You've asked yourself during those long nights staring at the ceiling, watching shadows move across walls, why is nothing shifting? You've observed others advancing while your own feet seemed anchored in concrete. You've carried dreams that hovered perpetually just beyond your fingertips, close enough to taste but impossible to grasp. Maybe you've interpreted that silence as abandonment, mistaken the pause as cosmic rejection or evidence that you've been forgotten. Listen with every cell in your body. Silence doesn't indicate absence. Delay doesn't translate to permanent denial. Reality has been listening the entire time, receiving every whispered hope at 3 a.m, every desperate plea you thought went unheard, every moment you believed no one was witnessing your struggle. Here's the truth that remains veiled until your consciousness expands enough to hold it. The waiting was never wasted duration. It functioned as preparation for a higher timeline, a larger story than the one your impatient mind kept trying to force into premature existence through sheer will and desperation. What's being prepared for you doesn't fit into small containers or ordinary circumstances. It requires you to be stretched beyond your current capacity, refined through pressure you didn't ask for, transformed into a version of yourself capable of holding what's approaching without collapsing under its magnitude or sabotaging it through unconscious patterns. That's why the wait extends longer than your patience wanted to endure. That's why it carved into you with such relentless intensity, shaping you in ways comfort never could. But that's also why you must keep placing one foot in front of the other through the fog of uncertainty, even when every rational thought screams that nothing will ever change. Think of a seed buried beneath layers of dark soil. For weeks, sometimes months, there's no visible evidence of life above the surface. An observer watching from above would see nothing, might even assume the seed had died or been planted wrong. But beneath the earth, invisible to impatient eyes, roots are forming, spreading through darkness in intricate patterns. Strength is building in silence. Foundation is being constructed in the hidden places where transformation actually occurs. If you pulled that seed up too soon, driven by anxiety to see results, you'd destroy the very process trying to bring the flower into existence. You'd murder the potential in the name of needing proof. That's what reality was doing with you during the silence that felt like abandonment. Protecting your growth from your own impatience, rooting your strength deep enough to withstand what's coming, holding back what you asked for until you developed the internal architecture to hold it without shattering under the pressure. The universe wasn't ignoring your requests. It was building you into someone capable of sustaining the answer. And here's what you need to understand with absolute clarity right now. The waiting is reaching its completion point. That's why this transmission found you at this exact moment, why these specific words are landing in your awareness now instead of last month or next year. You're standing at the threshold of transformation, feet planted at the edge where one reality ends and another begins. Soon you'll perceive with shocking clarity why certain doors remained locked during earlier chapters, why specific people had to exit your story, leaving wounds that felt unbearable at the time, why opportunities that slipped through your fingers despite your best efforts weren't failures or signs of your inadequacy, but redirections towards something your limited perspective couldn't yet perceive from inside the pain. The weight pressing down on you wasn't punishment for some unnamed sin or evidence that you're fundamentally broken. It was alignment operating through mechanisms your conscious mind couldn't recognize while you were trapped inside the pressure. It was love disguised as difficulty, wisdom dressed in the clothing of hardship. So don't abandon hope now when you're standing this close to the threshold. Don't confuse the pause before the door opens for the end of your story. Don't interpret the final stretch of waiting as proof that nothing will ever change. Reality hasn't forgotten you in the chaos of infinite unfolding stories. It has been crafting a path so much more expansive than the one your limited perspective thought you wanted, the small, safe version you tried to force into being, because you couldn't yet imagine anything larger. Every night you questioned whether things would ever shift, whether you'd been abandoned in the waiting room while everyone else got called forward. Those moments of doubt and despair weren't unseen or wasted. Reality counts them like precious currency. Reality carries them like seeds that will bloom into understanding. Soon you will witness how every prayer that seemed unanswered was actually answered in a language you couldn't yet speak, through a mechanism you couldn't yet comprehend from where you were standing inside the confusion. The delays that felt cruel were actually protection. The closed doors that felt like rejection were actually redirection away from paths that would have led you somewhere smaller than your destiny. The silence that felt like abandonment was actually the sound of something greater than you imagined being constructed in dimensions you couldn't yet perceive. Reality required you to wait because timing matters infinitely more than urgency. Because you deserve complete blessings rather than half-formed answers that would have crumbled in your unprepared hands, leaving you more devastated than if you'd never received anything at all. Because your story is still unfolding in chapters being written by intelligence that sees further than your immediate vision, that understands consequences and connections your conscious mind can't track. The most beautiful chapters are about to be composed, scenes so perfectly orchestrated you'll weep at their precision. And you needed to become someone capable of living them fully, of holding that magnitude without destroying it through fear or unconscious sabotage. Your cells have been reorganizing. Your nervous system has been upgrading to handle frequencies you couldn't have processed earlier. Your capacity has been expanding in the invisible places where real transformation occurs. The person who started this waiting period couldn't have held what's about to arrive. That version of you would have panicked, would have gripped too tight, would have suffocated the blessing through desperation. But the version of you sitting here now, forged through the fire of patience, shaped by the pressure of delay, you've become someone different, someone ready. So breathe into this moment with full awareness. The waiting is ending. The alignment is here, arriving not with fanfare, but with the quiet certainty of something that was always inevitable once you became ready to receive it. And when the doors finally swing open, when what's meant for you settles into your hands with the weight of undeniable reality, you won't question why it took so long. You won't resent the duration or feel cheated by the delays. You'll smile through the tears of recognition and whisper with absolute knowing, "Now I see it was always worth the wait." Every difficult night, every moment of doubt that nearly broke you, every time you almost gave up but chose to take one more breath, one more step forward into the unknown. Let this transmission anchor into your awareness as more than words passing through your mind. You're about to witness why reality orchestrated this specific timeline, not to punish you for unnamed crimes, but to prepare you for something your smaller self couldn't have imagined, to protect you from receiving before your container was strong enough, to deliver you into a life greater than anything your limited perspective could have designed from its myopic vantage point. The universe operates through precision that looks like chaos until you're far enough along to see the pattern. Your breakthrough exists closer than your doubt believes, closer than your fear wants to admit. And soon, perhaps sooner than you expect, you'll understand why the waiting functioned as a sacred part of your journey rather than a detour from it. The silence was gestation. The delay was preparation. The pain was transformation. And everything, absolutely everything, was always conspiring in your favor, even when it felt like the opposite was true. The story isn't over. The best parts are still being written, and you're finally ready to live them.